This wasn't just a fight in a restaurant. It was the raw, desperate struggle of a single dad, a man pushed to his absolute limit, and a confrontation that, in mere minutes, would expose a secret powerful enough to stun an entire city. The air in what was once a quiet, unassuming restaurant now thrummed with a raw, visceral energy, a symphony of destruction replacing the gentle clink of cutlery and hushed conversations. Late afternoon sunlight, once a comforting glow, sliced through the large pane windows, turning the swirling dust and shattered glass into a dizzying cascade of glittering danger. Mark, the focus of this maelstrom, stood his ground, his posture coiled, every muscle in his rugged frame tensed and primed for the next brutal onslaught. His gray leather jacket, usually a casual shield against the biting chill, was now a uniform of defiance, its worn fabric stretched taut across his broad shoulders, bearing the subtle marks of the violence already endured. His dark jeans, flecked with what could have been plaster or fragments of broken crockery, spoke volumes of a struggle that had spiraled out of control with terrifying speed. His eyes, the color of stormy seas, held a fierce, unyielding resolve, a fire ignited by something far deeper than mere self-preservation. It was the unshakable will of a protector, a father driven by an unseen, profound purpose. A short, meticulously trimmed beard framed a jawline set hard, a testament to an iron will, refusing to break. He was not a man prone to senseless violence, his life dedicated to a quiet, demanding routine. Yet here he was, locked in a brutal ballet of survival. The screams of splintered wood, the sharp crack of ceramic, and the muffled thuds of impact reverberated around him, creating a discordant soundtrack to the chaos. An overturned chair, its dark wood legs pointing accusingly at the ceiling, lay abandoned near his left, a silent, stark witness to the escalating conflict. Its once stable form now a symbol of shattered order. To his right, another chair, mid-flight, propelled with malicious intent by an unseen hand, spun precariously, a dangerous projectile threatening further havoc, its trajectory leaving a brief, blurry streak in the chaotic air. One of his assailants, a shadow of aggression, was partially visible in the periphery, his arm a blur as he completed the throw, his face contorted into a mask of determined malice, fueled by a mixture of frustration and raw anger. Another, closer to Mark, recoiled sharply, perhaps from a blow already landed, a sudden, jarring impact, or in anticipation of one yet to come, his defensive stance mixed with renewed, desperate aggression. His hands were up, a fluid barrier of defense and attack. The table nearest to Mark, once laden with a peaceful meal, was now a battlefield of broken dreams. A plate, smeared with the sad remnants of a meal now forgotten, floated eerily in midair, a fork still clinging precariously to its rim, moments before its inevitable shattering crash. Further back, another plate, already fragmented into stark white pieces, hung suspended in a frozen moment of violent impact, speaking volumes of the sheer destructive force unleashed in this quiet corner of the city. The metallic tang of fear and adrenaline was almost palpable in the charged atmosphere, mingling unsettlingly with the faint aroma of spilled red wine and the ghost of the dish that had been so abruptly interrupted. Each breath Mark took was shallow, deliberate, fueling the furnace within him, stoking the embers of his desperate resolve. He was undeniably tired, yes, the fatigue a dull, persistent ache beneath the white-hot surge of adrenaline, but he was far from defeated. Every movement, every defensive block, every calculated counter was fueled by a singular, overwhelming purpose, a driving force that transcended the immediate pain and danger. It wasn't just about making it out alive from this escalating brawl. It was about protecting a fragile future, safeguarding a dream that rested entirely on his broad shoulders. He fought not for himself, but for a quiet promise he had made under starlit skies, for a tiny hand that needed his unwavering strength, for a future he was painstakingly trying to build, brick by arduous brick, against impossible odds. This wasn't a casual brawl or a senseless act of violence. It was a desperate stand, a very public display of a private war waged against unseen, relentless forces that threatened to unravel his entire world. Little did anyone in that ravaged restaurant truly comprehend this desperate, instinct-driven fight, a clash born of necessity, love, and sheer desperation, was merely the first domino to fall. This chaotic spectacle, witnessed by shocked restaurant staff, a few terrified patrons cowering in corners, and the silent, judging gaze of the city beyond the windows, was poised to expose a profound, deeply guarded truth about his life. A secret that, in a mere matter of minutes, would ripple through the entire community, leaving everyone utterly stunned and unexpectedly offering him a chance, a lifeline he never, in his wildest dreams, believed possible. The shattered glass, the broken plates, the overturned chairs, they were not just grim remnants of a senseless fight, but potent harbingers of a transformation, the violent prelude to a revelation that would forever alter the course of Mark's life and the lives of those he held dearest. He fought not just to survive this harrowing moment, but to unlock a future he couldn't yet clearly see, a destiny that hinged entirely, irrevocably, on the outcome of this perilous public confrontation. He was a single dad fighting, and his secret was about to change everything. Hours before the explosive confrontation that would shatter the restaurant's peace and expose a father's profound secret, this very establishment had been a haven of quiet contemplation, a stark antithesis to the battleground it would soon become. Mark sat alone at a small, polished wooden table tucked away in a corner, the last rays of an indifferent sun painting faint, fleeting patterns across the checkered tablecloth. The air then carried only the subtle, comforting aroma of fresh bread, perhaps a hint of lavender from a nearby florist, and the gentle brewing of coffee, a world away from the metallic tang of adrenaline and fear that would soon dominate. His signature grey leather jacket, a familiar comfort and a symbol of his practical, unassuming life, hung loosely over the back of his chair, a silent sentinel to his momentary peace, its presence a stark contrast to its later role as a shield in a desperate fight. In his calloused hands, hands that had known hard work and tender care, he held a crumpled piece of paper, its edges softened and frayed by repeated handling, a testament to its constant presence in his thoughts. It wasn't a menu or a trivial crossword puzzle. It was a handwritten list, an inventory of needs and impossibilities that weighted his every thought, each item a heavy stone in his heart. His gaze, usually so sharp and focused on the practicalities of survival, was clouded with a deep-seated worry. Lines of concern etched around his eyes, a roadmap of silent anxieties, as he traced each item with a weathered thumb. The words on the paper were simple, everyday necessities, yet for Mark, they represented a mountain of challenges, an Everest he had to climb daily. A new pair of sturdy shoes for Lily, because her old ones were worn through. School supplies for the upcoming term, a constant drain on his meager funds. A prescription refill for her chronic cough, a persistent reminder of her fragile health. Each item a small, silent testament to the tireless struggle of a single father striving against all odds to keep his daughter's world stable, bright, and as normal as possible. He knew the precise cost of each item, not just in dollars and cents, but in the countless hours of back-breaking work he put in, the sleepless nights spent worrying, the silent sacrifices he made without a second thought, always putting Lily first. His coffee, now lukewarm and forgotten, sat untouched, a testament to how deeply engrossed he was in his calculations, his mind already racing ahead to how he would manage the week ahead, juggling bills and responsibilities. The immense weight of his responsibilities pressed down on him, a heavy mantle that he wore with stoic determination, a quiet burden that few truly understood. Mark wasn't just a dad. He was a provider, a steadfast protector, a beacon of unwavering strength for his daughter, Lily, who was the very center of his universe, her smile his sun, her well-being his only true compass. Every decision he made, every arduous task he undertook, every weary breath he drew, was filtered through the lens of her well-being, her future, her happiness. He was a man of few words, preferring decisive action to idle chatter, his days a relentless pursuit of stability in a world that often felt inherently unstable, precarious. He carried the burden of two lives on his shoulders, his and Lily's, and he did so without complaint, fueled by a fierce, unconditional love that transcended all obstacles, all pain, all doubt. The restaurant, slowly emptying around him, offered a brief reprieve, A fleeting moment of quiet before the inevitable demands of his reality crashed back in, heavy and insistent. He closed his eyes for a moment, picturing Lily's bright, infectious smile. That innocent joy, a stark contrast to the gnawing anxieties that plagued him daily. That smile was his fuel, his motivation, the secret wellspring of his incredible resilience, the reason he fought so hard. He knew he would do anything for it, absolutely anything to keep it shining. This list, these mundane items, were not just expenses. They were the battle plan for his ongoing war against circumstance, a quiet testament to the immense unspoken sacrifices of a father's love, a love that would soon be tested beyond imagination. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever the world might throw at him next, unaware that next would arrive far sooner and far more violently than he could ever imagine. The future, with its shocking twists and turns, its incredible revelations, was already drawing near, a shadow lengthening unseen behind the peaceful facade of the afternoon, ready to turn his quiet life upside down. The fragile calm that had enveloped Mark moments earlier, a brief respite in his ceaseless struggle, was violently torn asunder, shredded by the sudden intrusive presence of two figures looming ominously over his small private table. The soft afternoon light that had once painted gentle, comforting patterns now seemed to intensify the stark, almost predatory angles of their hardened faces, making their aggression even more pronounced. They were burly men, built like impregnable stone walls, their heavy frames casting long, menacing shadows that swallowed the last vestiges of peace in Mark's small corner of the restaurant, turning it into a claustrophobic trap. Their faces, hardened and uncompromising, were etched with an aggression that needed no words to be understood, a silent, potent declaration of hostile intent that sent a shiver down the spine of anyone who witnessed it. The air itself seemed to grow heavy, charged with an unspoken, malevolent energy. Mark's head snapped up, his initial preoccupation with Lily's vital list instantly evaporating, replaced by an alert, wary readiness that settled deep in his bones. His eyes, though still holding a flicker of the father's worry, sharpened, assessing the immediate, tangible threat with a cold, almost clinical precision. He didn't flinch, didn't recoil. Instead, a subtle tension entered his shoulders, a primal instinct kicking in, recognizing the danger without needing further confirmation. He recognized the type. Enforcers, the kind who valued intimidation over negotiation, brute muscle over reasoned discussion, their presence a promise of trouble. One of the men, a thick-necked brute with a scar over his left eyebrow, leaned in, his heavy hand gripping the back of a nearby dining chair, his fingers tightening on the polished wood with a possessive, almost destructive force. The chair creaked faintly under his grasp, a small, almost imperceptible protest against the impending violence, a harbinger of the chaos to come. He didn't need to speak to convey his menace. The gesture itself was a clear warning, a physical manifestation of the unspoken threat hanging heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. The other man, equally imposing, perhaps even taller, simply glared, his eyes like chips of cold, unforgiving stone, boring into Mark with an intensity that sought to dominate, to subjugate, to break his spirit, before the first blow was even struck. His presence alone seemed to swell, filling the small space around Mark's table, pushing back the very air around them, making it difficult to breathe. The casual clinking of distant silverware, the murmur of the few remaining patrons finishing their late lunch, all faded into an indistinct hum, leaving only the deafening silence of their hostile confrontation. It was a moment pregnant with unspoken words, of threats barely restrained, of a tension that stretched taut, threatening to snap at any second. "We had a deal, Mark," the first man rumbled, his voice low but laced with an undeniable sharp edge of menace, a subtle vibration that hinted at a deeper, more volatile fury simmering beneath the surface. "You disappear. You stay out of our business. But seems like you forgot." His gaze flickered contemptuously to the crumpled list still clutched tightly in Mark's hand, a sneer twisting his lips as if he understood the profoundly personal nature of its contents, Lily's needs, and found it amusingly pathetic, a sign of Mark's weakness. The second man simply crossed his arms over his massive chest, his posture a silent, intimidating endorsement of his partner's words, his cold eyes never leaving Mark's face, searching for any flicker of weakness, any sign of fear or capitulation. Mark, however, refused to give them the satisfaction they craved. "My business is my business," he responded, his voice calm, controlled, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within him, a maelstrom of fear and defiance. He kept his hands visible, open, a deliberate effort to project calm, even as his mind raced, calculating angles, potential escape routes, evaluating nearby objects that could serve as temporary weapons. "And I don't disappear when there's a wrong to be righted." This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Lily, about a promise he had made, about a debt he refused to let them collect in the way they intended, by compromising his integrity and her future. The air crackled with an almost visible electricity, the tension tightening its grip, poised precariously on the precipice of inevitable violence. He knew with an icy certainty that settled in his gut that the fragile piece of the restaurant was about to shatter, just like the glass that would soon fly through the air. His secret, his driving force, the profound reason for his stand, was about to be put to the ultimate brutal test. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring drawn to its breaking point, then snapped with brutal finality. The burly man, whose words had been a thinly veiled threat just seconds before, abandoned all pretense of civility and restraint. His hand, no longer merely grasping the chair back, became a dangerous blur as it lunged forward, a heavy fist aiming a clumsy but undeniably powerful swing directly at Mark's head. It was a move born of brute force, not skill, a desperate attempt to end the confrontation quickly, but it carried enough raw momentum to do serious, debilitating damage. In that split second, Mark's instincts, honed by years of navigating life's sharper, more treacherous edges, took over with preternatural speed. With a swift, almost fluid motion that spoke of innate survival, he shoved his own dining chair back with his left hand, the wooden legs scraping loudly and harshly against the polished floor, the sudden jarring sound echoing ominously in the suddenly silent, tense restaurant. The chair's movement created just enough space, just enough vital deflection, for the aggressor's wild, desperate swing to slice harmlessly through the air where Mark's head had been a mere fraction of a second before, a whisper of wind against his ear. The force of Mark's defensive maneuver, combined with the attacker's missed, overextended blow, sent the small wooden table between them lurching violently, its legs groaning in protest. Glasses teetered precariously on the edge, then cascaded to the floor with a series of sharp, alarming clinks and shatters, adding to the cacophony. Cutlery, innocent forks and knives that had moments ago been unassuming dining implements, scattered across the tabletop with a metallic rattle, and then skittered across the floor, their sharp scraping adding to the chaotic crescendo of the initial assault. A half-eaten bread roll, almost comical in its displacement, rolled forlornly across the plush red booth seating, a surreal, misplaced detail amidst the sudden, shocking chaos. The aroma of spilled coffee, hot and bitter, briefly filled the air, replacing the pleasant, lingering scent of the earlier afternoon with the scent of impending danger. The initial surprise that had momentarily flashed in Mark's eyes, a fleeting moment of disbelief, swiftly gave way to a grim, steely determination, a resolute set to his jaw. His jaw, already tight with the effort of holding his composure, clenched even harder, his teeth grinding almost imperceptibly. There was no going back now. The line had been crossed, the fragile peace irrevocably broken. The unspoken threats had materialized into undeniable, brutal violence, and Mark, ever the protector, knew with chilling certainty that he had no choice but to respond in kind, to fight for his life and future. He was outnumbered, yes, by two physically imposing men, but he was also driven by an unwavering purpose, a secret wellspring of strength that his attackers, with their shallow motives, could not possibly comprehend. His eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in a cold, calculating assessment of the immediate escalating threat. He knew he wasn't a trained fighter in the conventional sense, but he understood street logic, the primal, desperate need to survive, and more importantly, to ensure Lily's future, her fragile existence, was not jeopardized by these thugs. Every single fiber of his being screamed to protect what was his, what he had worked so tirelessly and sacrificed so much for. He wouldn't just defend, he would fight with everything he had, propelled by a love that was fierce, boundless, and utterly relentless. The restaurant's comfortable red booth seating, designed for leisurely meals and pleasant conversations, now seemed to press in on them, a suffocating blood-red backdrop to the escalating violence. The large pane windows, which had earlier invited the soft, welcoming afternoon light, now reflected the distorted, frantic movements within, bearing silent, shocked witness to the destruction. The calm, serene atmosphere was utterly gone, replaced by a charged, suffocating tension that hung heavy in the air. The second attacker, who had been glaring moments before, now moved swiftly to flank Mark, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light, anticipating an easy, swift victory. He assumed Mark was just another victim, another intimidated soul, utterly unaware of the profound depths of a single father's resolve when everything he held dear was on the line, when his entire world hung in the balance. Mark prepared himself, his fists clenching and unclenching, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He could almost hear Lily's innocent laughter in his mind, a distant, beautiful sound that fueled his every move, every defensive block. This fight wasn't just for him. It was for her, for their future. A secret battle being fought in plain sight, its true stakes hidden from all but him. The initial exchange, a whirlwind of fists and desperate evasions, had solidified the chaotic nature of the fight, proving beyond doubt that Mark was not just a passive target, but a formidable, if untrained, opponent. Yet the odds remained starkly stacked against him. The two aggressors, emboldened by their numerical advantage and a growing frustration at Mark's resilience, pressed their attack with renewed and brutal ferocity. One, the thicker-necked brute, closed the distance swiftly, a blur of heavy-set muscle and violent intent. His fist, like a blunt instrument carved from stone, connected with Mark's side, a glancing, tearing blow that sent a searing jolt of intense pain through his ribs. It wasn't a knockout punch, but it was enough to momentarily steal his breath, a sharp, unpleasant reminder of the raw, unadulterated power he was up against, a burning agony that threatened to buckle his knees. Simultaneously, the second attacker, whose movements were slightly more agile and cunning, launched a swift, straight punch aimed directly at Mark's unprotected head, a blur of malicious speed. Mark's body, reacting with an almost preternatural speed born of pure, desperate instinct, twisted sharply to the side, his forearm raising instinctively to block the incoming blow, a shield against the inevitable. The impact vibrated violently up his arm, a dull, sickening thud that still managed to sting deeply, sending shockwaves through his bones. But he held his ground, refusing to let the pain register fully, pushing it down, deeper into the well of his resolve. His face, a moment ago etched with grim determination, was now a mask of pure agony, contorted by the sharp sting in his ribs and the burning, radiating sensation in his forearm. Yet beneath the layers of pain and physical duress, a fierce, unwavering resolve still shone in his eyes, a defiant spark refusing to be extinguished. He stumbled back a step, the sudden shift in weight momentarily throwing him off balance, his foot catching precariously on the leg of an overturned chair, barely regaining his footing. The scrape of his shoe against the floor, combined with the sickening thump of the impact, painted a grim auditory picture of his harrowing struggle, a symphony of suffering and resistance. Around them, the restaurant was rapidly transforming from a once inviting place of dining into a desolate wasteland of destruction, a tableau of ruin. More chairs lay scattered and broken, resembling fallen, inanimate soldiers in a losing battle, their splintered wood a testament to the force unleashed. Small, reflective shards of glass, likely from a delicate wine glass, glittered malevolently on the dark floor like treacherous stars, catching the fading, distorted light, reflecting the chaos. A discarded napkin, now soaked and stained with a dark liquid, added to the grim tableau, a somber detail in the growing devastation. The air, thick with the scent of confrontation, now also carried a faint, coppery hint, the unmistakable aroma of blood, possibly from a small cut on Mark's lip that he hadn't yet registered in the heat of battle. He was taking hits, absorbing punishment, enduring a brutal beating, but each blow, each wave of pain, only seemed to fuel a deeper, more primal wellspring of resistance within him, hardening his resolve even further. This wasn't about winning gloriously. It was about enduring, about outlasting, about refusing to yield, about showing them he would not break. His internal monologue was a torrent of grim determination, a furious whisper in his mind. "Not today," he thought, the words a silent mantra thrumming through his aching body, resonating with every beat of his heart. "Not while Lily needs me, not while I still have a chance to give her a future." He pictured her innocent face, her bright, trusting eyes, and a fresh surge of adrenaline, cold and revitalizing, coursed through him, momentarily dulling the searing pain. He knew he was outnumbered, outmuscled, clearly at a physical disadvantage, but he also knew what he was truly fighting for. These men were fighting for some petty control, some ill-gotten gain, driven by greed and malice. He, however, was fighting for a life, a future, a secret dream that transcended their petty squabbles, a love so profound it made him fearless. He watched his attackers, their faces contorted with exertion and mounting frustration, realizing that his sheer, unexpected resilience was beginning to chip away at their overconfidence, their arrogance. They expected him to fold, to surrender at the first sign of pain. But Mark, the single dad, had learned long ago that giving up was never, ever an option when Lily's future hung in the balance. His eyes remained locked on his assailants, a silent, unwavering promise that he would not break, no matter how many blows he had to endure. He was bruised, battered, but profoundly not beaten, and the fight was far from over. The initial shock and searing pain, though deeply felt, had galvanized Mark, hardening his resolve into an unyielding core. What had begun as a desperate, purely defensive struggle now morphed into a brutal, chaotic dance of evasion and counterattack, a testament to his sheer will to survive. The aggressors, their patience wearing thin and their initial confidence replaced by a simmering frustration, became more desperate, their attacks less calculated and more wild, fueled by a raw, frustrated rage that blurred their movements. One of them, the more agile of the two, let out a guttural roar, a sound of pure, animalistic fury, and launched a wide, sweeping punch with all his might, clearly intending to incapacitate Mark with a single devastating blow. It was a risky, all-or-nothing move, leaving him momentarily exposed and off balance, a fatal flaw in his aggressive pursuit. Mark, his senses hyper-alert and sharpened by the threat, saw the opening, a fleeting vulnerability in the attacker's overzealous lunge. With a graceful, almost serpentine movement that completely belied his growing weariness and the pain throbbing through his body, he ducked swiftly under the sweeping arc of the punch, his head just inches from the blur of the attacker's massive fist, feeling the wind rush past his ear. The aggressor, caught completely off guard by Mark's unexpected agility and quick thinking, overextended, his body leaning precariously forward, throwing him significantly off balance, leaving him momentarily vulnerable. In that same chaotic instant, born of the maelstrom of destruction, a plate still smeared with the remnants of vibrant tomato sauce from an earlier forgotten meal suddenly became a dangerous projectile. It arced violently through the air, hurled with furious, desperate intent by the second attacker, narrowly missing Mark's head by what felt like a mere hair's breadth, a chilling whisper of danger. The porcelain missile continued its trajectory, smashing against a far, once pristine wall with a sharp, resounding crack, sending a shower of white ceramic splinters cascading down like a miniature violent snowfall, a stark symbol of the ongoing destruction. The sound was jarring, punctuated by the faint hiss of the cooling shards as they settled. An overturned wooden chair, its legs splayed awkwardly and precariously, lay dramatically in the foreground, forming a temporary, haphazard barrier between Mark and one of his attackers, a silent testament to the sheer unbridled chaos that had engulfed the once elegant dining room. It was more than just a fight now. It was a desperate struggle for dominance, a physical manifestation of wills clashing violently, an existential battle. The air was thick with the scent of pulverized drywall, mingled unsettlingly with the lingering smell of spilled food, now mingled with the acrid tang of sweat, fear, and a faint hint of ozone. Mark, though still outnumbered and visibly bruised, found a fleeting moment of vital respite as his attackers momentarily regrouped, their faces now showing a mixture of genuine surprise at his unexpected resilience and a growing, seething exasperation. They hadn't expected this kind of unwavering tenacity from a man who had initially seemed to be an easy, compliant Mark. This brief lull, a precious few seconds in the eye of the storm, was all Mark needed. His mind, despite the throbbing pain in his side and arm, raced with furious intensity, analyzing their patterns, seeking out new weaknesses, formulating his next, critical move, realizing this was his chance to turn the tide. He noticed the way the larger man favored his right side, a slight, almost imperceptible hesitation in the left man's follow-through, subtle tells that only a desperate, focused mind could discern. These were minute details, but in a brutal brawl like this, they could mean the crucial difference between survival and defeat, between victory and something far, far worse. He knew with chilling clarity that he couldn't possibly outmuscle them, not against their combined strength and weight, but he believed, with a fierce certainty, that he could outsmart them, outlast them, drawing upon a hidden well of cunning and fierce determination he didn't know he possessed. Every scrape, every impact, every near miss, every surge of pain only fueled his resolve further, hardening him. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the silent promise he'd made to Lily, a secret vow whispered in the quiet sanctuary of his heart that kept him going against all odds, against all common sense. This fight was a dangerous barrier, a brutal test of his spirit and his love, and he absolutely refused to fail, no matter the cost. He inhaled deeply, the sharp, almost painful intake of breath momentarily clearing his mind, his eyes scanning the debris-strewn floor for anything at all, that could be used to his advantage. A makeshift weapon, a pivot point. The restaurant, in its state of violent, chaotic disarray, suddenly seemed to offer unexpected tools for his desperate survival, hidden opportunities waiting to be exploited. The fleeting pause, that momentary, breathless lull in the storm, was all Mark desperately needed. He knew with chilling certainty that he couldn't afford to merely react to their relentless aggression. He had to seize the initiative, to turn the tide of this brutal confrontation decisively in his favor. His eyes, burning with a renewed, almost feral intensity, scanned his immediate surroundings with a predatory keenness, searching for an advantage. The overturned wooden chair, which had moments ago been a mere obstacle or a symbol of chaos, now transformed vividly in his mind into a strategic asset, a tool for survival. With a sudden explosive burst of raw energy, a surge of pure adrenaline pushing past his throbbing pain and exhaustion, Mark used the sturdy frame of the chair as an anchor, a pivot point. His body, bruised and aching but still remarkably agile, rotated powerfully around it, his left leg extending with a controlled, desperate force, aimed with precision. The kick connected with a sickening thud against the chest of the larger attacker, the one who had overextended moments before, leaving himself vulnerable. It wasn't a graceful, practiced martial arts kick, but it was raw, unadulterated power, born of a father's primal resolve, a desperate surge of strength. The man gasped, a choked, involuntary sound escaping his lungs, clutching his chest as he stumbled backward several steps, his heavy frame momentarily stunned, his face contorted in a visible mix of surprise, indignation, and genuine, sharp pain. The impact sent a jolting vibration up Mark's leg, a minor discomfort amidst the greater battle, but he ignored it completely, already moving, his mind racing ahead. He knew he had created a small, vital window, a precious few seconds of disarray in their coordinated, relentless attack. He couldn't afford to waste a single fleeting instant. Before the first attacker could fully recover his breath or composure, or the second could react effectively to his partner's sudden stumble and pain, Mark pivoted again with fluid speed. His gaze, sharp and analytical, fell upon a jagged shard of a broken plate, its edge sharp and glistening ominously amidst the debris on the floor, a forgotten danger now repurposed. Without a moment's hesitation, his hand shot out, scooping up the ceramic fragment with practiced ease. It wasn't intended as a weapon to inflict serious, debilitating harm, but rather as a distraction, a momentary disruptor, a way to break their focus. With a sharp, precise flick of his wrist, He hurled the plate shard directly at the face of the second aggressor, aiming for maximum surprise. The man, startled by the unexpected projectile and the sudden glinting danger hurtling towards him, instinctively threw his hands up to shield his face, his focus and aggressive momentum momentarily broken by the defensive action. The shard either struck his arm with a sharp slap or whizzed past his ear with a menacing whisper, but the immediate effect was the same. It bought Mark invaluable, life-saving seconds, creating another opening. These were sharp, precise movements, born not of practiced combat training or calculated strategy, but of sheer, desperate instinct, the kind of terrifying clarity that emerges only when everything you care about, your entire world, is on the line. The restaurant, now a scene of utter wreckage, seemed to amplify the raw sounds of their brutal struggle. The grunts of exertion, the scrape of shoes against broken glass, the heavy, ragged breathing of all three men. Mark, though still outnumbered and bearing the marks of their blows, felt a flicker of hope, a tiny ember of possibility igniting within him, pushing back against the encroaching exhaustion. He had taken them by surprise. He had broken their rhythm, disrupted their presumed dominance. He realized they were used to easy targets, to intimidated victims who folded at the first sign of aggression, to men who would crumble under their pressure. They hadn't anticipated a fight, certainly not one fueled by such a deep, unyielding, and profoundly personal motivation. His heart hammered in his chest, a powerful, defiant drumbeat of resistance against overwhelming odds. He pushed through the pain, through the growing exhaustion that threatened to consume him, reminding himself relentlessly of Lily, of the secret future he was fighting to secure for her, a future free from this kind of violence. This small victory, this momentary disruption, was a testament to his unbreakable spirit, a sign that he would not yield. He watched his attackers, their eyes now holding a hint of confusion, a dawning realization that this brutal confrontation was not going according to their well-laid plan. They were facing more than just a man. They were facing a father fighting for his child's future, a force more potent, relentless, and dangerous than any they had ever encountered. The echoes of the violent confrontation slowly faded, replaced by the heavy, ragged sound of Mark's own labored breathing, a stark contrast to the silence that now permeated the devastated space. The restaurant, moments ago a blur of furious motion and brutal destruction, now stood eerily still, a tableau of utter devastation, a silent testament to the fury unleashed. Furniture lay broken and scattered haphazardly, like the grotesque remains of a forgotten battle. Shards of glass, glinting malevolently in the now softer, dying light of the afternoon, formed a treacherous mosaic across the dark floor, interspersed with the pristine white fragments of countless shattered plates, each piece a small memory of chaos. The plush red booth seating, once so inviting and comfortable, was now dislodged, torn, and scarred, a silent, vivid testament to the raw fury that had been unleashed within its walls. Mark stood amidst the wreckage, a solitary, defiant figure, bruised and panting, his grey leather jacket torn at the shoulder, but undeniably victorious, his stance weary, but firm. The two aggressors, defeated and utterly disoriented by his unexpected tenacity, had scrambled hastily out of frame, their ignominious retreat punctuated by the frantic clang of the back door slamming shut. A final, jarring sound. He watched them go, a flicker of cold, fleeting satisfaction in his eyes, a moment of triumph over injustice, but it quickly gave way to an overwhelming wave of crushing exhaustion. The adrenaline that had fueled his every move, every block, every desperate counterattack, now receded rapidly, leaving him feeling hollowed out, drained, every muscle screaming in protest, a symphony of aches. He leaned heavily against a sturdy, miraculously untouched pillar, his knuckles scraped raw and bleeding, a dull, persistent ache throbbing behind his temples, a constant reminder of the physical toll. He closed his eyes for a brief, precious moment, savoring the sudden, profound silence, the blessed absence of immediate threat. The fight was over. He had won. But the true question lingered, a heavy weight in his heart. At what cost? And for how long could he continue this desperate struggle? He opened his eyes, surveying the desolate scene of devastation, a sharp pang of regret piercing through his immense relief. This wasn't how he wanted to live, always on edge, always fighting, always just one step away from disaster. He had promised Lily a stable, peaceful life, a world free from this kind of fear and violence. His gaze, still hard and focused from the fight, softened almost instantly, melting away the warrior's facade as a small tentative movement caught his eye, drawing his attention like a magnet. From behind the sturdy wooden counter, where she had been bravely hiding, huddled in terrified silence throughout the harrowing ordeal, a young girl slowly, cautiously emerged. It was Lily, his precious daughter, no older than 7, her small, vulnerable frame silhouetted against the dim light filtering from the kitchen beyond, a beacon of innocence in the destruction. Her eyes, wide and luminous with a mixture of fear and profound, overwhelming relief, found his across the ruined room, holding a silent, questioning plea, a need for reassurance. A tiny, almost inaudible gasp escaped her lips, her small hands instinctively reaching out for him, seeking the safety of his embrace. Mark's heart, which had been a drum of war moments before, now swelled with an overwhelming wave of love and fierce protectiveness, a love that obliterated all pain and exhaustion. He pushed himself off the pillar, ignoring the protesting screams of his aching muscles, and moved towards her, his stride quickening, desperate to reach her. This was his true victory, her safety, her unbroken spirit. Just as Lily took a hesitant step forward, her tiny legs trembling, the restaurant owner, a kind-faced woman named Clara, rushed into the frame from the kitchen entrance, her apron askew. Her expression was a complex mixture of shock at the widespread destruction and deep, profound concern for both Mark and Lily, understanding the gravity of the situation. Clara had a long-standing, quiet relationship with Mark. She knew him as a quiet, hard-working man, a devoted, unwavering father. She understood the unspoken struggle, the daily grind, the secret sacrifices he made day in and day out. She had seen the raw, desperate courage in his eyes during the fight, and now, seeing Lily emerge from her hiding place, the pieces of the puzzle, the true motivation, began to click into place in her mind. The fight wasn't random. It was deeply personal, and Clara, a compassionate mother herself, knew exactly what kind of secret strength, what boundless love, could fuel such a desperate public stand. The gravity of the situation and the profound, visible love she witnessed between father and daughter hung heavy in the air, transforming the senseless violence into something far more meaningful, something truly heroic. The moment Mark's aching arms enveloped Lily, pulling her tiny, trembling frame close, it was as if an invisible, impenetrable, protective shield materialized around them, momentarily warding off the lingering chaos and the acrid scent of violence that still permeated the restaurant. Her small body, still trembling faintly from the sheer terror of the fight she had witnessed, burrowed deeper into his chest, seeking the familiar comfort and unwavering strength she always found there, her anchor in a tumultuous world. He held her fiercely, his chin resting gently on her soft hair, inhaling the innocent scent of childhood, a stark and poignant contrast to the metallic tang of blood and fear that still clung stubbornly to him. The raw, guttural sound that escaped his throat, a sound of profound release, was a mix of overwhelming relief, bone-deep exhaustion, and a father's boundless, unspoken love. It was a sound that resonated deeply in the silent, devastated space, speaking volumes without uttering a single articulated word, a pure expression of paternal devotion. Clara, the restaurant owner, stood nearby, a respectful distance away, her initial shock and disbelief at the scene slowly giving way to a more profound understanding, a deep, empathetic sadness shadowing her kind, observant eyes. She watched Mark and Lily, a silent, deeply moved witness to their vulnerable reunion, and a terrible, heartbreaking realization slowly dawned upon her, connecting the dots of the day's violence. This wasn't just a random brawl. It was a desperate, primal act of protection, fueled by a secret so heavy, so overwhelming, that it had twisted a good, honorable man into a corner, forcing him to make unthinkable choices. As Mark gently stroked Lily's hair, his hand trembling slightly, reassuring her with soft, soothing murmurs that everything was now all right, he finally, in hushed, raw tones, began to speak. The words tumbled out, heavy with the weight of untold burdens. of lonely nights and desperate choices. His voice was hoarse, strained, a stark departure from his usual quiet, reserved demeanor, raw with the truth he had guarded for so long. He revealed the full, agonizing extent of his secret, a truth he had carried in lonely, suffocating silence for far too long, bearing its crushing weight alone. "Lily, she has a rare medical condition," he began, his voice cracking slightly, filled with a fragile vulnerability. "A severe autoimmune disorder. The treatments are experimental, incredibly expensive. Insurance barely covers a fraction, a pitiful percentage of what we need." His gaze lifted to Clara, eyes pleading for understanding, for a glimpse of forgiveness, for someone to truly see his impossible plight. He spoke of the countless sleepless nights spent hunched over medical journals and online forums, researching cures, of the endless parade of doctors who offered grim prognoses and even grimmer bills. He detailed the crushing, suffocating weight of medical bills that piled higher than he could ever hope to pay with his meager wages from honest, back-breaking labor. It was a narrative of a father pushed to his absolute breaking limit, forced to make impossible, morally ambiguous choices in a world that offered little compassion, only demands. Then came the harder, more shameful truth, the very reason for the brutal fight he had just endured. Those men. They were connected to a side job, Mark admitted, his voice barely a whisper, thick with shame and a desperate sort of resignation, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. A morally ambiguous one. I took it. I had to cover Lily's next round of treatments. They wanted me to do more, something illegal, something that would jeopardize everything I'm fighting for, everything Lily's future depended on. I refused. I couldn't. He had tried to walk away, to sever ties completely, but they weren't the type to let go easily, especially when they saw a desperate man, a father desperate enough to cross lines for his child, a weakness they could exploit. They had come here, to his one place of relative normalcy, to make an example of him, to force his hand, to break him. The ruined state of the restaurant, with its shattered glass and overturned tables, suddenly seemed utterly insignificant compared to the immense human drama unfolding before Clara. The profound sacrifices of a father's boundless love laid bare. Clara listened, her heart aching for Mark, for Lily, for the impossible burden they bore with such quiet dignity. The secret wasn't one of malice or greed, but of a father's boundless, desperate, and ultimately heroic love, a love that had pushed him to the brink and beyond, transforming him into a warrior. Months melted into weeks, and the raw, painful scars of that violent afternoon slowly, steadily began to fade, both from the physical landscape of the restaurant and the deeper emotional landscape of Mark and Lily's lives. The shattered glass had been meticulously replaced, the splintered chairs painstakingly restored to their former glory, and the vital sense of peace painstakingly rebuilt, brick by emotional brick. The restaurant, once a scene of utter devastation and chaos, was now fully restored, transformed, not just physically in its elegant decor, but profoundly in its very spirit. It buzzed with a vibrant, welcoming energy, filled with the cheerful hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of clean silverware, bustling with new patrons who felt drawn to its renewed warmth and the quiet, inspiring triumph it now represented to the community. Mark, the man who had fought so desperately and openly for his daughter's future, was now visibly healthier, happier, and carried a lighter burden. The deep lines of worry that had once etched his brow, a constant map of his anxieties, had softened considerably, replaced by an easy, genuine smile that reached his eyes, crinkling them at the corners. He stood cheerfully behind the newly polished counter, his sturdy gray leather jacket replaced by a crisp, clean apron, working diligently and with a newfound lightness alongside Clara, not just as an employee, but as a trusted partner, a valued friend. He greeted customers with genuine warmth and a steady, calm voice, the heavy shadow of past desperation completely gone from his demeanor. The community, deeply moved by his raw honesty, his profound sacrifice, and the undeniable purity of his fatherly love, had rallied around him in a way he could never, in his wildest dreams, have imagined. Clara had not just understood his plight, she had become a fierce champion of his cause, sharing his story with unwavering belief. A prominent feature now adorning the once scarred wall was a framed newspaper clipping, carefully preserved behind glass, its bold headline proudly proclaiming, "Single Dad's Secret Fight for Daughter Inspires City, Unlocks Community Heart." The article detailed Lily's rare, challenging medical condition, Mark's impossible, heartbreaking choices, and the courageous stand he made against overwhelming odds. It wasn't just a tale of senseless violence, but of extraordinary resilience, of a father's boundless devotion, and the unexpected, profound kindness of strangers. Below it, sitting modestly but proudly on the counter, was a small, tastefully designed donation box for Lily's treatment, a tangible, heartwarming symbol of a community united in purpose and compassion. It was already filled to the brim with a heartwarming collection of notes and coins, each contribution a silent vote of confidence, a heartfelt gesture of solidarity, and a collective promise of unwavering support for Lily's journey. Lily, the radiant heart of this profound transformation, was now seen smiling brightly and freely at a clean, sunlit table nearby, completely at peace. Her laughter, free and unrestrained, occasionally echoed through the restaurant, a melodious, joyful counterpoint to the gentle chatter, a sound of pure, unadulterated happiness. She was engrossed in drawing, her small, healthy fingers deftly maneuvering vibrant crayons across a fresh sheet of paper, her world now safe, secure, and filled with the shimmering promise of a healthy, vibrant future. The exorbitant medical costs, once an insurmountable mountain looming over Mark's life, were now being managed, eased significantly by the collective generosity of a city that had been initially stunned by Mark's secret, then deeply moved to action by his unwavering, powerful love. The atmosphere of the restaurant was palpable with warmth, hope, and a quiet, profound triumph, a tangible sense of renewal. It was a testament to the transformative power of truth, the incredible, enduring strength of a father's love, and the boundless, inherent capacity of a community to come together when faced with genuine, heartfelt need. And as you, our cherished viewer, witness this heartwarming, inspiring resolution, we sincerely hope you're left with a powerful sense of inspiration and a renewed belief in humanity. If this incredible story touched your heart, please consider showing your support by liking this video, share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting, unforgettable true stories just like this one. Your invaluable support helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives of human resilience, unexpected kindness, and the triumph of the human spirit against all odds. Thank you for being a vital part of our journey and for believing in the power of these stories.